Hi everyone, welcome back to Visually Hidden Selects. I'm Peter O'Brien, and today I would like to talk to you about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington from 1939, directed by Frank Capra and starring James Stewart, Jean Arthur, Claude Rains, Thomas Mitchell, Edward Arnold, and Harry Carey. This was Frank Capra's second collaboration with James Stewart and his third collaboration with Jean Arthur. They had worked together on the previous year's Best Picture winner, You Can't Take It With You, which also starred Edward Arnold as well as some other familiar supporting character actors. Stewart and Capra would reunite again 7 years later for It's a Wonderful Life, which, of course, if you haven't seen, you should check out our VHS video on that as well. This was also the final film that Frank Capra made for Columbia Studios, which was a studio that he actually really helped become a major player in the golden age of Hollywood. They were originally kind of like the gutter studio. And Frank Capra turned all of that around almost single-handedly with his films, such as It Happened One Night, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, the aforementioned You Can't Take It With You, and of course Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And this film is really a culminating point in his career because of the subject matter and because of the subtext of the film. It really kind of rings pretty true to him and his character. You know, he was an immigrant and a patriot, so he shared a lot of the same ideals as Jefferson Smith in this film. The basic premise for the film follows Jefferson Smith, a newly appointed junior senator who is sent to Washington not only because of his upstanding moral character, but also because of his naivety. But once there, his enthusiasm and patriotism take over, leading him down an eye-opening journey of professional politics. The film really hits the ground running, and it is exceptionally well-paced and very well written, and that comes across almost immediately. The transitions and the editing in this film, the segues of the story through the characters just align so nicely. And it's really kind of incredible because there's comedy, there's heart, there's drama, there's politics, there's romance, there's kind of a little bit of everything with the exception of horror. But in its own way, of course, there is a villain, and there are some horrible things that do occur throughout the course of the film. But it manages to maintain that light tone. That's kind of an interesting thing that is Capra-esque, so to speak, you know? A lot of people will talk about his films and sometimes they're considered to be Capricorn in that they're a little corny, but I don't think that's a fair assessment of his films. His films are actually pretty dark and they deal with a lot of very dark themes, like how evil is throughout the world, but how good can rise above and conquer that evil. And I think there's a significant difference between that outlook and the superficial outlook of just calling his films corny. And it's remarkable how when you're watching this film, even though it was made in 1939, the ideas of propaganda and specifically political spin are brought into the narrative and just how they're utilized, even though they're concepts that we deal with daily in our life, to see how they were implemented and executed in the 1930s, it really hasn't changed that much, which again is just something that I think makes this film timeless and relatable. It really is like a crash course in United States politics and procedure. Honestly, they should really show this film in all high schools across the country. It should be required viewing for anybody 16 years or older. James Stewart is, of course, the star, and this is kind of his breakout role. He was in several films prior to this, but this is really his first full-on leading man role, and he's teamed once again with Jean Arthur, his co-star from You Can't Take It With You, and she is just such a great actress, and especially in this film, she really comes across nicely. Her character, Clarissa Saunders, is basically Mr. Smith's right hand. He would be nothing in this film, except for a stooge, without her character supporting him and kind of educating him in the wilds of Washington, D.C. politics. She is one of my favorite female characters of all time because of her smarts, her professionalism, and her portrayal is just very genuine and comes across very nicely. She has a great scene with Thomas Mitchell where it's one shot, smack in the middle of the movie, where she's kind of just working through some of her problems and she kind of just reaches a turning point for her character, and her performance throughout that whole sequence in the middle of the film really just hits differently than in the rest of the film. But the two standout performances for me personally in this film, James Stewart and Jean Arthur aside, are Thomas Mitchell and Claude Rains. Claude Rains was the Invisible Man, so it's great to finally see him on screen. I was so excited when I first saw this film and he turned up. He just has such a commanding presence, and really it's his voice, which is what got him the role of the Invisible Man to begin with, but it's such a different character. He has such a great arc, and just the way his character deals with the conflict that he finds himself in, the way he tries to navigate the situation, and his feelings for Jefferson Smith really come across. It's an incredible character and an incredible performance on his part. But I really love Thomas Mitchell because he's kind of the comic relief. He has a very blunt way of interacting with the characters. Most of his scenes take place with Saunders, Jean Arthur's character. He, of course, would go on to star in It's a Wonderful Life with James Stewart as Uncle Billy. This film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards in 1939, which was second only to Gone with the Wind, which was nominated for 13. Surprisingly, it only won one Oscar for Best Original Story, which is different than Best Original Screenplay, which it was also nominated for. Both Claude Rains and Harry Carey were nominated for Best Supporting Actor, but they lost to Thomas Mitchell, who won for Stagecoach that same year. So 11 Oscar nominations, one win. A little bit of an upset in my opinion. And this in the same year as Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. So 1939 is kind of regarded as one of the greatest years in cinema history. And a big part of it is because of Gone with the Wind, but also Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And it's really funny because this film has a very unique distinction of being hated by the press because of their portrayal in the film, hated by politicians because of its illusion that Washington might be corrupt, loved by audiences, and loved internationally with the exception of fascist Europe. Actually, I think before the Nazis occupied France, they selected one film to screen as like the final film for their, culture, and they selected Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and so it played for 1 month straight before the Nazis moved in to occupy France during World War II. And it was kind of their hope and their wish and their dream to persevere over fascism and Nazism. But my absolute favorite thing about this film is there is no mention of political parties whatsoever. You have no idea whose side anybody is actually on. It really just focuses on the issues and the conflict behind those issues and the character motivation creating those issues. At no point do you ever hear the words Democrat or Republican or Whig or Independent throughout this entire film. It really keeps it grounded so anybody can watch it and fall into the story and follow it and make up their own mind. So that's it for Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I really hope you like this recommendation, and please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. If you do watch Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, leave us a comment and let us know what you think of the film. We will be discussing it at length on the next Visually Hidden Selects podcast, so be sure to tune into that. Until next time, see ya.